I'm Andy Jenkinson, caravan industry expert. Welcome to my channel. Hi, welcome to a new video. Now, today I'm actually in a caravan that was built originally in 1972. Now it's on a restoration job, and I'm still I've got my cup of tea as per normal, and this van was one of the UK's most popular selling tourers. Was the Musketeer along with the Alpine and the 400, and eventually the Major. Now the one I'm in today, the fact that it's that it's survived from 1972. Okay, it needs some work on it, but it's been kept outside, and it's basically been pretty much neglected, really, not used for a long time. But it is now going to get restored. Now the Musketeer was made in several layout choices, and this one is called the CD because it had two twin dinettes at either side, and the washroom in the middle, wardrobe, and your cooker, your kitchen also opposite. Now the difference with this is the door is actually on the wrong side for the UK. So you may ask, why is it doing what's it doing in the UK? Well, it was aimed at the export market, and it was made for a couple of years. I think from about 1971, 72. I'm not sure it made up to 73. They did this layout for the UK for export. But anyway, I'll have a look at the end before, at the end of the video, I'll check that out. But anyway, basically, these are one of the rarer layouts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you around it, because what you've got to remember, it is definitely under restoration. And the worrying thing is I can remember these as a child being brand new and being sort of blown away. But Sprites were part of CI Group. Sam Alper, of course, he was a great entrepreneur, massive big influence in the caravan industry, and moulded the industry into the state that it is today, really. So without him, it would have been a different affair, because Sam wanted to make it more of a professional organisation rather than sort of a bit of a country cottagey type of industry, because it had been like that, and it still is in some ways, but that's not in a bad way at all. So I'm going to take you around this. I'm going to have a quick do my tea because it's quite cold. It's a late afternoon and the weather out there is pretty grim. So I'm going to take you around and show you the kitchen, the washroom, and then after that I'll put on some photographs of what the Musketeer would have looked like when it was brand new, and the cost, etc. So anyway, let's go down memory lane. Far away. Right, what I'm going to do is, I've just been sat in this front lounge area. I'm going to show you, point you a few things out. Now, obviously, this is under under restoration, or it's going to be. There's a few attempts made on it to start, but there's a lot of work to do, but it's all doable. Right. Well, first of all, I've just noticed. I mean, I'm not tall, but this step-down roof was called a swan neck roof, and it was a Sprite feature from 1958 on the Musketeer, and also landed upon the Major. But anyway, enough of that bit. Let's get on with the van. Gas lights. Well, that's how it was. There was no actual fluorescent lights then in the Sprites, because obviously Sprite was a budget tourer. And don't forget, these are only really made to last 10, 15 years maximum. And here we are, nearly 50 years later. Now, things like this in 72, 73, CI were trying to cut their costs because it was a massive organisation. You've got to remember, it was bigger than what the Heimer Group is now. It was worldwide. And so costs were sort of trying to cut the costs down, keep the weight down, and things like this. Now, this has all come away, obviously, and it was just like hardboard, shaped. And a sliding door would have been across here, I think, if I remember rightly. And that's all it was. It was built very, well, I suppose you could say very cheaply, if you're going to be nasty, but more economically. And things like the plastic window cappings down here, that's something that went on a lot of old vans, because the plastic with the sun coming through would crack and deteriorate. But the cushions in this van are still original. Behind these covers, that's what they were like. Look at that. That's brilliant. Now, I mean, obviously, they would be brighter orange than that, but crikey, after 50 years, they're entitled to fade a little bit. And also, these are the original curtains. Incredible. And you got a glazed stable door in those days as well. These days, you pay extra for glazed stable doors. But in those days, it was on the cheapest Tourer. Now, someone's added a light here, and I think they're trying to fit mains electrics in the van, which often happened with a lot of caravans in the 80s from as mains became more popular on caravan sites by the end of the 80s. So people wanted electrics in the van, very simple, basic electrics. But when it came to bedtime, this would be made into a double bed using the table, which would fit in between. And if you look here, these are hardboard tops. God. Again, it's down a bit to cost, but then again, a lot of caravans use them or plywood in the day, and some of the imported new Tourers today still use plywood. It's incredible. Right, so that would have been your double bed. Let's have a quick look at the washroom. Right, here is the centre washroom, and of course by today's standards this is very, very basic, but back in the day this is all you needed. I quite like the way the wheel arch there is boxed off, and the pipe there for the waste from this sink. And don't forget, there was actually no direct water pumped to it, so you'd have to take your kettle in and empty it in there to wash your hands. And you'd also have a Elsan loo in here. It's obviously pretty far pre any cassette days, and that was it basically. And there wasn't even a light in here. And so, I mean, we're having to use a makeshift light because obviously we haven't got the gas lights working yet, etc. So we've had to make do with this. But look at this, you've got a little shelf here and a mirror. So at night time, really, you'd have to, well, you'd struggle to use it, wouldn't you? You'd have to go in there with a torch. What some manufacturers used to do, they used to actually put a window, frosted window, in the door of the toilet, so the light from the main part of the caravan would shine through. It wasn't very effective. I can remember my parents having that, and that wasn't very effective. But that's basically your washroom. And basic it is, but that's how it was. Right, I'm going to have a look at the wardrobe now as well, because that is quite a big wardrobe actually. Right, now of course there's no fire in this. I mean, that was an optional extra, as was the gas tap feed, which was about £3. And of course in those days you used a flame type gas fire. There was none of this blown air system and all that sort of business. Not, well, I say that Carver actually produced the first heater, which it actually vented it out through the floor, so you could leave it on during the night. But on the normal ones you had to have some ventilation, otherwise you'd all died. Sounds a bit drastic. Now look at this. I love this wardrobe because you've got these shelves here. I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't put those shelves in, but they did. And it, you know, you'd put your jumpers on, because of course, don't forget, people didn't travel with as much stuff. And I also like the National Caravan Council approved sticker. They put it in the wardrobe. I just makes me wonder why they always did that. Some manufacturers stuck them outside the door. Others sometimes just stuck them, well, maybe a bit on again in the washroom. But this is all very simple. It's just very simple framework. Again, it'd be down to keeping it light. But also, if you look up here, you could actually stick something on the top, because the wardrobe didn't go up to the roof. And one of the reasons would be, is to do that would have meant curving all this, and that would have cost more money. And look at this. This is plastic. This is to fill in the gap. So it would be far easier just to stick plastic round there than it would be to do any other way of doing it, I presume. And again, that keeps costs down. But these were very functional Tourers. I'm just going to shut this door, because I'm just going to quickly show you something as well. The woodwork that they used here came in 1970, and the boast was you could stub it with a cigarette end and it wouldn't burn it, wouldn't mark it, should I say. But anyway, those are those days. Now you've got a mirror on the wardrobe door here, but also you've got these catches. Now, see, I brought these catches in around about 1967, 68, and when you look at them you think, well, crikey, those look fairly brittle. But do you know what? I've seen older Sprites and that catch is still working. That's incredible. I mean, what they used to do, you used to find out if people had been a bit rough, this would break off here and you'd only have a little bit there left to do. But that was just to CI themselves on the Sprites. I'm not sure if they used them on Europas as well, but I'd have to look at that. I just remember. Right, I'm going to have a look at this kitchen now. Right, now the kitchen is pretty basic, as you'd expect. Now, at the bottom end there, there's a foot pump. That would have been obviously a retrofit. They used to fit a Jupiter one in, I think, if I remember rightly, and that used to be on like a little foot pedal here, and used to do it like that. But this other one is possibly a whale. I'm not sure, without getting down there. And that was a floor operated foot pump. You used to get hand ones as well. But look at this, all these drawers. I mean. And there's your cutlery. And that blue look to match your washroom. And more drawers. It's just lots of more cutlery there, look. But I mean, these things are still opening and shutting all these years on. And again, your cupboard. Actually, that's. I don't know. No, I'm not gonna tempt fate because I don't want to break that off. It's probably a bit stuck. Ah, that one's better. A bit of a shelf in there. Now, what would happen is, because Sprites were very sort of popular with people who were starting caravanning, and there were people who usually were either starting it to see what it was like, if they'd like it at all, or just because they couldn't afford an upmarket model. So what they used to do, Sprites were notorious for people adding like a full oven. So that oven would have got you got your burner still at the top here, but in that cupboard would be the oven. And if you were very well, I won't say wealthy, but if you were really pushing the boat out, you'd have a fridge, and that would go in there, and that would be gas operated only. But this is a grill, 2-burner hob, and again there was no lighting down here, so you had to rely on the gas lamps that are just up there. And also there's no stainless steel sink, of course. This is plastic, and that's where the pump feed is. Now again, as I say, these didn't come with a pump in at all. That would be another year or two later. It was all cost cutting, all cost saving, to make these affordable. And you look again, we've got these lockers. Look, again, very, very cheap, sort of very simple framework. And again, we've got the hardboard here, which I think, if I remember rightly, when these came out, they were sort of steamed into position. They had to steam these to get the curves and keep it in. I might be wrong on that, but I'm sure that was what I remember reading at the time. Again, that's all you've got. And again, the roof locker doesn't go right to the ceiling, again, to keep the cost down, because that seems got a slight curve on it. And look, there's your roof vent. And that roof vent was really just down to the CI group. So if you wanted a roof vent, you had to go to a CI specialist. But in those days, CI made sure that they had their dealers were full of all the parts and spares, which would go back about 10-12 years. And here, when we've taken off the work surface, this slides over to give you some extra worktop there. So once that's gone, so it doesn't fold back as a lot normally did, it slid over. Now that kitchen, I think, is pretty good. It's it's pretty practical when you think about it, even in today's terms. But back then, this was a very basic Tourer that sold in hundreds and hundreds in a year, and was so affordable and put so many people on the joys of caravanning. It was just really untrue. I call them really the Ford of the caravan world. Right, well, I'm going to end up doing a little summary, and I'm going to go up to the rear of the lounge, which is obviously over there, and get my assistant cameraman to hold the camera, and also see if we get the light sorted out as well. So it is now very dark outside, so the lighting really has done very well with getting it sorted. So yes, so this would unclip on there, and this would come back down again. So again, this would be a protector regarding stop your flame getting blown out with the door being here. It's there in the dark. Right, let's do a summary. Right, I'm in now the rear end dinette. Of course, this as the front, the table went down in the middle here, and your cushions across, and it made a double bed. Now remember that these caravans weren't as wide as today's. I think this was about 6'10", 6'8", 6'10", somewhere around about there. And you'd think inside that they'd be pretty cramped, but you know what? You'd be wrong. There's lots of leg room here. There's lots of room down between the kitchen and the wardrobe and the washroom. It really is quite well designed. So what do I think? Well, the thing is, I've got a real soft spot for Sprites. I met Sam Alper. I had lots of conversations with him. I stopped at his house with him a couple of weekends, and he gave me a lot of information. A lot of information that was never ever publicised, and also a lot of archive material that never saw the light of day. Some of it has seen the light of day in the Sprite book, and it will hopefully see light of day in other books as well, because I like to share what I've got. But back to this, 4 people in here. Do you know what? 2 adults and 2 kids. I think you'd actually smash it. There's plenty of room, and again, you've got to remember this was used just for summer use. There was no going winter touring. Well, you could have done, but my God, you'd have had to have been a little bit. A bit tough, let's shall we say, because these glass windows would have frozen up. And I can remember going with my parents up until about early November. They had they had a few caravans, but one of the last tours they had towards the end was a Welton caravan, which I used to go in, and an eldest Tornado, actually, a new 77 Tornado. And I can remember waking up in my bed down the bottom end and the glass just being frozen. And I remember the first time we went to a caravan, our own first caravan, we were out towards Penrith way, and it was August, and we stopped because my dad he wouldn't go on the site. We seen him going in like his council tip lay-by, but it was quiet, and it was great because as a kid you could go up and down the gravel heap things. But I can remember one morning my dad waking up, and it was a bright morning, and we were absolutely frozen in our first caravan. There was no fire or anything. And my dad went out for his usual cigarette, as you did in those days, and he came back into the caravan and he went, you know what, it's actually warmer outside than it is in the caravan. And that's how it was in those days, because obviously insulation was as good. This was glass fibre insulation in the roof and the sides. There was no underfloor insulation whatsoever, not like today's tourers. And actually they started putting in full insulation on sandwich floors back in the 70s. Actually, I think it was an ICI developed system that caravan manufacturers used to advertise that in their brochures as a big plus. But going back to this does bring back memories for me, seeing these on the sites. Not so much this CD layout. You know, this was a rare layout. I mean, I may have seen 1 or 2 when I was out and about as a kid on site, but not many. They were usually I think they called it the S and the C, and those were the most popular layouts. Which had a bunk bed in them, which was a hammock bunk that they used. But as I say, gaslight in here, that's the only gaslight you've got, this top end. And after that, there's no other lighting. But you'd have been in here and you'd have played cards, snakes and ladders after tea, and you'd have had a transistor radio, no tellies or anything like that. It was a very simple way of caravanning. What people are yearning to try and get back to today, they're trying to get back to that, you know, they call it off-grid caravanning. Well, look folks, that was happening back many years ago, and in this case 1972. So, you know, we all had a 12-volt battery that we used on the car, and you could run a portable telly, black and white of course, and you could run it for a couple of hours. After that you had to be careful, because otherwise you'd have a flat battery in the car. You used to have to put crocodile clips, put the bonnet up, put crocodile clips on the battery, and then feed the cable through the window in the back of the telly. And that's if you can get a picture, because reception coverage in those days was very poor. But I just think it's great to come in this van, and I'm hopefully going to see it when it's back to its former glory, because Sprites are part of caravanning social history. They put a lot of people onto caravan, as I said before. A lot of people, if they had a Caravan, they had a Sprite. And if nobody knows anything about Caravans, they'll know a Sprite usually. And when you think this was the biggest manufacturer, not just in the UK, in Europe, but also on a global scale, the Ci Group, who owned Sprite, were massive. Factories all over the place: Italy, Germany, France, New Zealand, even in the US for one particular period of time. Anyway, it's getting a bit chilly in here now, and I better round this video up, and hopefully I'll have a few decent pics at the end of this video, as I say, what it looked like when the Sprite was new. But yeah, it really is. It's a bit of nostalgia for me, because, as I say, I remember these a lot, and seeing them on site, and yeah, part of the history of the Caravan. Right, I love you and leave you. Thanks for subscribing. Please keep liking, and hey, I'll see you on the next video.